you, sir. This is the last talk. I'm glad. I suppose you'll be glad and I'll be glad too. I think one should go over briefly what we have been talking about the last two talks and the two question meetings. We talked about the chaos in the world, the great uncertainty for all of us. Life is becoming more and more dangerous, unpredictable, and the future, from what one observes as things are politically, economically, even socially, is rather grim. One is not pessimistic or optimistic, but these are facts. They are preparing for war. Man apparently has not learned from past history that killing another human being is of no value, doesn't solve any problems. But apparently that's the fashion, that's the national inheritance and accepted orthodoxy. And nobody seems to demonstrate, and there have been a great many demonstrations about nuclear war, about this and that, but nobody, from the highest to the lowest, seems to demonstrate to end all wars, not a particular kind of war, atomic, or the conventional war, or the types of war. But one has not given one's energy, or the drive, or the intensity to stop all wars. Of course, the politicians will never agree to that, nor the gurus, nor the highest Christian authorities. If they did, they wouldn't be the highest authorities. And also, we talked about the general disorder outwardly, and the inward disorder that we live in with. We talked about hatred spreading throughout the world more and more. And there seems to be no end to that. We talked also about human beings wounded psychologically from childhood, and the consequences of that hurt, the wounds that one receives while being educated in the family, education, college, university, and the whole process of living seems to breed a kind of inward hurt, which breeds isolation, fear, and this kind of neuroticism that seems to be common. And also we talked about, perhaps the most important thing, is relationship. How essential it is to find out for oneself, to live a life in which conflict doesn't exist in relationship. Sexual, the individual search for his own fulfillment, pursuing his own ambitions, and therefore the relationship is never complete. It's always divided like two parallel lines, never meeting. And that's what we call relationship. And therefore in it, there's perpetual conflict. And the cause of that conflict, that lack of deep, fundamental relationship, is this sense of isolation. Not only the individual isolation, the very word indicates isolation. But that word too has a different meaning. Indivisible. A human being who is not broken up, living at different levels of his life, business life, religious life, social life, family life, and so on. Such a human being cannot possibly have deep, abiding, lasting a relationship in which there is love. We've talked about it quite a lot. And also we were inquired together into the nature of fear. Whether it is possible for human beings living in this ugly world to be totally free completely of all fear. Fear is a terrible thing. It darkens, shortens, it makes one's mind so brittle. And whether it's possible to be free of all fear, both psychologically and outwardly. Where there is fear, there cannot be generosity, cannot be that sense of great affection. We also talked about love and compassion and intelligence. We said that that which is love cannot be approached positively. But that which is not can be put aside. Jealousy, ambition, antagonism. Ambition, competition, deny the very nature and the beauty of love. And we talked about also compassion. There can be no compassion, obviously, if one is anchored in a belief, in a faith, in a dogma, or belonging to some group, some sects. Such a person may have pity, sympathy. generosity, but it's not compassion. Where there is compassion, there is intelligence. We went into that. We inquired into what is the nature of a human being that is intelligent. If intelligence is based on knowledge, it's the outcome of knowledge, then we have a great deal of knowledge about most things in life. But that knowledge has not transformed us, has not made us intelligent. The very antagonisms, national divisions and racial and religious divisions indicate how unintelligent we are. Somebody should write a history about stupidity. And I believe they have. That was perhaps in the 30s, somebody wrote a book. But that such books are easily forgotten, put aside. And we talked about yesterday the nature of suffering. Why human beings who apparently have such extraordinary skill, such extraordinary capacity in the technological field, have not used that capacity, that energy, that quality of intensity to wipe away all human suffering, both physically and psychologically. Perhaps they will succeed wiping away physical pain, disease, and so on. But man has lived for millennia upon millennia, and yet he suffers. And we went into that. Be carefully, and it would be not the occasion again to repeat what was said yesterday morning. So we ought to talk over together this morning. And please don't consider it rather morbid or unnecessary on a lovely morning like this, to talk about death, because it's part of our life, as all the other characteristics of our life, like hate, jealousy, violence, an occasional flare of the beauty of love. It's all part of our life. And also, we ought to talk over together. Not that you are listening to the speaker, copying his words or his statements, or try to understand what he's talking about, but rather together investigate these problems and find out the truth of them. And so please, we are talking over together. You are sharing, partaking, cooperating, not just listening and then agreeing or disagreeing and walk off. Do your Tai Chi endlessly, or your yoga, or some practice of some guru which he thinks will enlighten you. But we are concerned with our daily life, not some exotic, fanciful religious concepts, but actual daily life of conflict. The confusion we live in, the uncertainty, the search for security. We've been through all that, which is part of our life. And also, death is part of our life. Though we may not acknowledge that fact, though we may try to avoid it, slur over it, or only be concerned at the last minute, as most people are. So we should together inquire into the nature, into that extraordinary fact, as life is an extraordinary fact. We ought to consider that also. And we should too consider, before death and meditation, what is beauty? This is important too. Does beauty lie in the eye of the observer? Is beauty a state of mind that has studied all the paintings, the poets, and the statuary of the world and come to a certain conclusion? The architecture of the most extraordinary buildings in the world, from the deep pyramids to the Parthenon, to the cathedrals, to the temples and the mosques. And when one observes those marvelous trees, the sequoias who have lived 5,000 to 6,000 years, some of them. What is beauty? Where is beauty? In the poet, in the poems, in the literature, in the painting. Or when you see a beautiful person, well-formed, beautiful features. What do you consider to be beauty? This is important because love goes with beauty. So one must inquire into this nature of what is beautiful. When do you perceive beauty? You see a marvelous mountain with deep valleys and shadows against the blue sky, with all the light of heaven upon it. And for a moment you are struck by this grandeur.